Narcissism, toxicity, negativity, possessiveness, these are some of the terms that one uses when describing a toxic relationship. In this panel discussion, we are going to break down these terms. Statistically, 8 in 10 deal with, which is toxic relationships. My name is Lavania. I'm a serial entrepreneur and I run Dance Embassy, the founder and director of it, and also Tinter Whatever, a business networking platform for women. And I have here with me 3 expert panel speakers, and I really thank HomeGround Asia for hosting this panel discussion. Welcome, ladies, to the panel, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself one by one. Let's start with Yvonne.
Thank you. My name is Yvonne. I'm a couples and family therapist. I've worked for many years in mental health and helping relationships in families and couples. Yeah, I have my own private practice and I enjoy it very much. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Martha.
Yes, thanks for having me. My name is Martha. I'm a relationship counselor and clinical sexologist. So I've been practicing for 12 years. I work with individuals and couples, usually on sexuality, relationship challenges.
You're being very humble. Talk about the books that you have written so far.
Yes, I have 4 books. That's it.
So humble. It's nice having you here. And next we have Mahima.
Hi everyone, I'm Mahima. I'm a clinical psychologist, EFT tapping practitioner and hypnotherapist. I work with teenagers and adults and couples. I've been working for over a decade. Currently I'm practicing at Thrive Family. I specialize with trauma and anxiety. And I think I overall seek to help people improve the quality of their lives in ways meaningful to them.
Wow, it's a lovely panel of speakers we have here. So I feel like defining toxic relationship is so difficult. Like it has multi-dimensions to it and a vast spectrum to it, ranging from the sneakiness of it, dealing with narcissists, to the extremity of it, dealing with a psychopath. So would you like to define a toxic relationship, Mahima, if you can?
I think one of the core elements that we look for in toxic relationships is when you feel like your sense of self is eroding in it. So is your confidence going down? Are you feeling like you're not worthy of respect? Are you feeling like you don't deserve to be treated well? You don't deserve your space, you don't deserve your voice? And overall, if kind of almost you're shrinking within the relationship. And of course, other pointers are mental health issues, rising anxiety, rising feelings of depression, panic attacks, all these kind of things probably is where we would begin.
Yeah, I agree with what Mahima is saying for sure. And I think a lot of times in the couples that I work with, you can see that people are drained, right? They are really depleted in the relationship. It's not fulfilling them anymore. And you can tell that there's up and down, it's volatile, right? There's lots of breakup and back again, breakup and back again, right? A lot of threats of divorce. So those are the types where you feel that you're on a roller coaster and you're unable to get off it and you feel depleted at the end of it. So yeah, those are the signs that you're in a relationship that's not healthy.
Yeah, I think because of the word toxic, I think of it as poison. So when you have enough poison, you become poisoned and then you die. So essentially, it's almost at that feeling of like you are, I call it walking zombie. You feel like you've lost your sense of self, your identity, and it's poisonous, it's negative.
I think one other hallmark would be to check that if you feel scared of your partner. So that's often kind of a very important question because sometimes toxicity is not as obvious. They might not be hurling abuses or pushing you against the wall, but it can be more subtle. But if you're scared of your partner, that's something to look out for.
So that's the sense of walking on eggshells. I hear clients using that term, and also they get triggered. They don't know why they're having a big reaction to something that seems really harmless. It's because there's a lot of poison that has already set in, and they're actually feeling really scared. So they get triggered because they anticipate what kinds of fights are going to happen.
I think guilt is also quite common, and that's one of the things that makes people stay. That in some way they either think that it's their fault or they might think that for some reason they still have to keep staying. So these are some things to look out for.
So let's explore that more. I read that it's easier to get out of a personal relationship as opposed to getting out of a professional relationship. Like for example, a toxic relationship with your boss, but people choose to stay in that job and absorb that toxic relationship. Like, why is the reason for not getting out of that as easier as in a personal relationship? Like you can just say, okay, bye boyfriend, next fish. But in a job, I guess because of financial stability or
So
codependency, I don't
actually,
know.
it's not easy even to get out of personal relationships because, as far as I remember, data shows that it can take people up to 6 years before they even seek help if they are in an abusive relationship. So it takes that long. But of course, professionally also, so I've seen many of my clients in that quandary, and to just even get them to see that what they're going through is not normal and is not okay, and they do deserve to have rights. Everything is quite difficult because there's a lot of financial insecurity, there's a huge imposter syndrome, and now of course in today's market, what else will be out there? And so there's kind of a lot of brainwashing that's going on internally, which builds a culture that this is normal and this is okay.
But even as you're saying, Mahima, this is relevant for both for work and
Correct.
for personal, right?
True,
What you're saying.
true.
So I also agree with you that I think it's just as hard to get out of that personal relationship if it's unhealthy, and especially if you have children, and especially if you have a family. That makes
Yeah.
it even harder because you
Yeah.
think that you have to stay for your children,
Yeah.
the image that you have the intact family, the desire to make it work, you're still
Yeah.
holding on to hope.
Yeah.
So it's much harder to be in a personal, to get out of that in the personal context. But definitely in the work context, I think maybe people experience a bit of shame as well, that they shouldn't be feeling this way in a work context. They should be able to be clinical about it, not let them affect them, take it like it's their boss, it doesn't matter. But but it may trigger up their own trauma, maybe. Their boss's trauma is coming out and relevant to the work relationship. So that's all that makes it a little bit more complicated to leave a work relationship that's unhealthy.
I know many people, they are very, very good at work. They are high performing at work because we receive a lot of training of how we should behave professionally at work. And many of us are better able to compartmentalize work versus family because we actually haven't had much training about our emotional and personal relationships and how to relate. So it's almost as if somehow the skills that we have at work doesn't really transfer, not necessarily, not all the time, to the way that they relate with their partner. So you can have somebody who's looks very, very functional and high performing at work, but at home maybe they are just lazy and they collapse and they are not sharing and caring about their partner, not contributing to the house work and things like that. So you can have actually people making decisions that this is what I'm going to be at work and this is what I choose to be at home.
Yeah.
So there are people who say, okay, I bring home the money and you take care of the housework. And also there's all this burden on women in general, to be the one who is the responsible for the kids and the house. So these are all different layers of how negative a relationship can be.
Yeah.
I think owning up to being vulnerable, to struggling, is also difficult at work because you have to maintain this persona that, oh, I've got it all under control, otherwise people will think I'm weak. So that makes it more difficult to actually voice up that this is not working. And I think another thing is that there is this false hope that it's temporary, it's going to get better with the next promotion, with the next role change, with the boss moving out, and kind of that perpetuates that it's just for a short time. And I just have to pull through, and I just have to pull through. And people kind of end up neglecting the impact on their mental health, on their relationships due to it.
All right, let's take this topic to the bedroom. I'm looking at
Martha's
expertise. When it comes to not performing in bed or just not connecting with your partner on that level of intimacy, and I feel like most couples just be in it for the sake of being in it. Would you consider that toxic or something else?
Yeah, definitely. This is when the body wisdom can kick in, because any resentment that you have outside of the bedroom in relating with the partner can manifest itself in the bedroom. So there are people who are able to go through with the sexual act. However, at some point their body will start to shut down. Their body will be having sensations of aversion, and because the body doesn't want to have sex, and the body will respond accordingly. And it's very difficult to fake like a flinch and things like that. So the resentment does affect sex in the bedroom. For instance, clients who are afraid of their spouse, their wives, and they can lose their erection. and
Afraid of their wives?
yeah. We have a lot of. I'm sure we meet in our work a lot of very dominant, aggressive women as well.
Oh, wow.
So it can happen either way. A partner will be shut down in the bedroom, have no desire, make excuses of tired, things like that.
That's really a great insight. Also, talking about the extremity, sexual abuse. Have you faced any of these clients coming to you with regards to this, and how would you advise someone going through sexual abuse to get out of it?
There's a lot of guilt and pressure that because you are the spouse, you have to give. This is a form of abuse when you keep going against what you want and what you have to say is being disregarded, including in the bedroom. So it is a form of abuse. And only a couple of years ago that Singapore changed our law such that marital rape is now implemented. Other than that, before that, women didn't have the rights to say no in the bedroom. And if you are forced to have sex, even though you don't want to, it's not illegal. So this is definitely progress for Singapore.
Thank you for shedding light on that. I think that's a really important point. And coming to interracial marriages, I'm looking at you because you're in an interracial marriage, as is with myself. I find it really difficult to match our cultural differences, and sometimes the words that we use on each other, I find it offensive as an Asian, but he as a French, he thinks that he's coming from a open source of communication. Is that toxic relationship?
Well, I wouldn't class it as a toxic relationship, but I would say that there's a lot of misunderstandings that needs to be cleared out, right? So it can lead to an unhealthy pattern of communicating, but if you work at it extensively, you can work through this. So indeed, my husband is British, English, and he would try to sometimes correct my English, and and I go, okay, right. So it could lead down that path, right?
Yeah.
But we've got through it. We've been married for so many years now. We've got through that where it doesn't really lead into an argument per se. But it can do, right? Because if I am sensitive in a certain way where it actually makes it really difficult to communicate further, then it could lead to a fight, it could lead to an argument, a recurring pattern that will keep happening. So there's a potential to, but couples really need to work hard at trying to understand the other person and making sure that you're both on the same page, you're both respecting each other at least, not saying it to put down the other person, and you're trying to come to a point of mutual understanding.
Especially when it comes to kids, I think that also is a major part to play.
Yes, exactly, and different parenting styles. So I think that plays a very big part in intercultural relationships for sure. Even if you're not of an intercultural relationship, you have that differences anyway. So you add on the different culture, and then that's multiplied by 10.
So I think probably one takeaway from that is to just not assume. Right? Because we might have particular intentions, and as you love your partner, you never intend to cause hurt, but it happens anyways. So it's safe to not assume and always check kind of what's landing, how did that feel, what do you understand of it, what do I understand of it. I think we need to look out for a sense of safety and a sense of respect in relationships. If those two are good, then most likely, it's not really a toxic situation. Of course, there could still be areas of work. So it's not black and white. Most relationships have challenges. It does not mean that they are toxic or abusive. That's also something we need to be careful about over-labeling.
Yes.
So we hear that when you're feeling really emotional, people will come in our session and they say, oh, my husband is narcissistic and my wife is OCD, and like they're flinging mental health labels and, oh, that is abusive. And we really have to check, okay, what happened and what's really going on? Because through media and through other references, we can have a half-baked understanding, and which can end up causing more hurt to the relationship. So it's good to be informed about it, and checking for your sense of safety, your sense of respect, your sense of self. Do you feel supported? Do you feel seen? Do you feel heard? Do you feel like you have the right to be your own person in your relationship?
Yeah, I'm always cautious to give labels like narcissistic or OCD or because it leads to a block. It leads to something that People just blame somebody else and they don't take responsibility or they don't acknowledge their part in the relationship.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get into that block where you just go, right, this person is just narcissistic and that's it.
Yeah.
So we want to explore more of the pattern in the relationship,
Yeah.
more of
Mm.
understanding, and then you can learn more about the other person and help the relationship and help them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So flipping the coin, looking at the other side of the coin, like how you mentioned, people usually throw these terms to the other party, saying that they are the ones causing a toxic relationship, but the person who's throwing those terms, they could be toxic themselves,
Yeah.
right? To identify
Yeah.
themselves as toxic.
Yeah.
How would you, let's say if a client like that comes to you, how would you help them to identify themselves as being the toxic one actually? Or like,
I wouldn't call them toxic.
yeah, of course. Yeah. So how would
So
we
yeah,
navigate?
so I would really like to empathize with them. We're really working out what is their need here, what is their feeling here. Maybe they're feeling trapped, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling shame, guilt, all the different things. And once they know more about themselves, they might then be able to unpack the different needs that they have and free up why they're labeling their partner as toxic or narcissistic. So I would really work with them in terms of their internal working model, and then we will go that way. So I wouldn't call them toxic.
Yeah. And how about sexual displeasures with people who are like blaming the other party? That person is not exciting enough in bed for me. How do you deal with those kind of comments?
Yeah, I would hear both of their perspective, like what's really going on, and why they feel dissatisfied, what's working and what's not, and what are some of the differences between the two. Generally, there will be one person who's okay with more of the same things, and another person who would prefer something more of a variety. So I get them to reconcile the differences between each other, not by pointing out who's right or wrong, but appreciating the differences and understanding their why. Will help them to then take steps towards being a comfortable place of reconciliation or like moving forward.
Yeah, and I think coming back to your question of how do you help the person who's flinging the allegations, perhaps. So as Yvonne said, firstly, we don't label either one because that can make them feel attacked and blamed and defensive, and that's the last thing that we're looking for in therapy. But what we could do is first engender a sense of empathy. That, how do you saying that, oh, this person is toxic, how do you think that makes your partner feel? And how does that help your relationship? And then we could get a deeper understanding of the behavior, that when this is said or this is done, what is the experience like for both partners, and perspective taking and work around that. So not making them feel evil or not making them feel like, oh, you're a bad person, because then obviously they're going to close up. Right. That also closes our opportunity for healing and change. But reaching the person beyond the behavior is important for any kind of therapeutic change as well.
So it makes me think, Mahima, that sometimes people have their own traumas as well. So they may be fighting as a response of their own trauma.
Yeah.
So it's a fight or flight response that they have, that they say, okay, the other person is this way, and the other person is this,
so
right? So they are actually really fighting that and coming from a place where they're actually hurt, vulnerable, and really, really needing healing.
Yeah, because if you think of it, people aren't born evil. Why would you be doing that if you're causing pain? It's often coming from your own source of pain, which may not be recognized at all.
So can we say that upbringing has a major role to play in this?
Yes.
Let's touch on that a bit, because I'm the only child in the family, and being the only child, parents tend to be over possessive, and in Asian terms we call it tiger mom and tiger dad. And I felt like as I was growing up, I was always told to do things that the elders say, and I wasn't given a voice. And I feel like that has clamped me down a lot on a lot of issues, especially when it comes to boyfriend issues in school. I couldn't talk about it, and if I was dealing with like a possessive boyfriend, I tend to feel like I'm attracting that kind of person because of my relationship with my parents. So let's speak more on a person like me from a family background like that. How can they identify or even speak on such issues with their parents, given that we're speaking to Asian parents here? Sometimes both the ears are closed when we talk about such issues.
This is my work, right? As a family therapist, I work a lot of healing relationships, and more now I have adult children come in wanting to heal their relationships with their parents in their 60s, 70s, and it's really wow. Like at this time in Singapore, we have a growing population where we are in their 20s and 30s and wanting to really reach out and and heal from this, right, and work with this, and so it's possible, right? So you have to come to a point where you understand that your parents come from love, come from care, being overprotective, wanting the best for you. And if you come from that point and you share your own hurt and vulnerability, and your parents can hear that, that can be very healing. So I've had many conversations where parents have said, "I'm sorry for the hurt I've caused," and that itself has moved so much for the adult child, and they've come to really accept that parents mean well, and they really feel it. So yeah.
What if one party gets, okay, I'm talking about Asian parents' perspective again. Most times they're like defensive. I'm just doing this for your own good, such remarks that they throw.
Yes. So yeah, I get a lot of that too.
Yeah.
So they would feel that they are being wronged, right? That they are being blamed or being accused as not being a good parent, and that can be very triggering for them.
Yeah.
So really, as a therapist, I would help them understand and help empathize with them that they are coming from a good place and having that belief, and then they can empathize with their child. So yes, they will start off with that I'm just doing the best, right? If I was brought up my age, parents might say that I was parented even worse, right?
Yeah.
My parents was
I
even
survived.
I survived, right? I was, my parents was even more harsh with me.
Yeah.
So they would actually say that.
Yeah. And when talking about manifesting that hurt and showing that in the bedroom, do you actually, with your clients, explore what could have caused them that hurt from the childhood days?
Yes, when I ask them, often they will just attribute it to the way they were brought up. For instance, their discomfort with touch, their discomfort with expressing their desires in the bedroom, or even like asserting themselves, their inability to receive. It all comes back to the way they were brought up. And I think a lot of people are very focused on like talking about the past, and they are not really acknowledging that they are no longer kids and they can actually take responsibility to heal themselves instead of blaming and saying this is how it was and I'm a victim, to actually take steps towards reclaiming and creating the future that they want for themselves. And I just want to add to what Mahima said, because it brought up for me that actually you can have 2 or 3 children brought up in the same family, and you can have different outcomes with the children because we have different levels of sensitivity as well. So it's not to say that this was worse for me and therefore it shouldn't bother you. It's all of us are different, and the way we process things are different. And so this shaming is really, and judging is really causing a lot of distress.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, that no matter what our pasts, now we are adults and we have the ability to reclaim our power, our sense of self, and be the kind of people that we want to be. And of course, that can sometimes be difficult by ourselves. That's why it's really good to get help. There are people trained to support you with this, and it's absolutely possible. And I've seen, and I'm sure we all have seen, such transformations that we feel really grateful to be a part of those changes as well.
What are some extreme actions people have taken when they are in a toxic relationship?
Extreme actions?
Yeah.
I
don't know, like
threats of suicide.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest one that comes to mind. So a lot of times, even in families, so even families, marriages, people threaten to kill themselves, right? And they feel so overwhelmed, so trapped, then they will actually want to. And I've heard many stories of clients who actually, they will go to the window ledge and actually be held back by family members. So those are the signs that that's not healthy. The relationship's not healthy. Yeah. So lots of that threats of suicide. I'm sure.
Self-harm,
Yeah.
low dose suicide attempts as well, where you take some pills, or
Yes.
of course threatening suicide, and There would be things like, for the perpetrator, things like, you'll shut off phone access, you'll control internet access, you'll control money, you'll kind of basically micromanage and supervise all movements. So, yeah, you'll kind of...
you leave and they disappear. So that has happened
Yes.
as well. So actually, they just
Yeah.
leave for a week and you don't hear from them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't hear from the partner for a week,
Correct.
even though you have family and you got kids.
Yeah, and the partner is drinking, or they're calling, if you leave me, I'll kill myself. You can't do this to me. So basically, the other person is trapped that if I leave, this person will die, and that will be on me. So that's a very common, especially when people are dating and things, even otherwise, that I'll die if you leave, or I'll die if you won't be with me.
I want to dive into this term called gaslighting, because it is so sneaky that you feel like it's part of your life. And actually, my best friend was the one who told me about the term gaslighting. And I went to read up on it, and I'm like, I wouldn't have known like all these terms are actually related to a toxic relationship. How does one person who's being gaslighted feel about what they're going through? Like most times you kind of like question yourself, like, am I really up for this kind of a life that I'm having? And this person who's gaslighting me, I really love that person, but should I tell that person it's gaslighting? And most often than not, that person denies gaslighting you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So it goes back to what we were talking about, really, about being in a unhealthy, toxic relationship, right? You doubt yourself. You think something, you feel something, but the other person is telling you no, right? And you doubt yourself all the time, and you feel that, oh my goodness, your sense of self is really eroded. So that's really back into the unhealthy, toxic relationships.
And what if they refuse going, like, with, let's say, for marriage counseling? No, there's nothing wrong in our marriage. Why pay a person to tell us that there's something wrong?
So you might have to start off with individual support first. So self-doubt is probably the main litmus test. That if you are doubting your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own opinions, whether they're accurate or not, realistic or not, just check in. Are you having that feedback that what you think is not real, and someone else's version of your reality is more authentic than your own? And of course, this person who's doing this may not be doing it intentionally either. Sometimes people can be very sure, almost a bit too sure of their own versions, and not really open to the fact, well, that's just how I see things, not the other person, right? It's like there's this story that 4 blind people were brought near an elephant, right? And one person was touching its trunk, one its tail, one its leg, and one its back, and they all described the elephant in different ways. And it was all true. It was just different sides, different perspectives. Some people really struggle with that. So the person who is gaslighting may not realize it, may not do it intentionally.
Right.
And when something like that is thrown at your face, again, it can make you very defensive. That, oh my God, why are you saying that? I would never do that. So there would be a much gentler approach to bringing this to light, very similar to how we were talking about how would the person who's actually, perpetrating the toxicity in the relationship, how would we help them see? So in a similar way, maybe you would not go in with gaslighting as the problem in the relationship, right? That would not be the presenting issue, as we call it. There would be other issues in the relationship. And if the other partner is not ready, as is often the case, you probably start off with getting individual support for the person who's being gaslit, who's, help them get more confidence, feel more sure about themselves again, and then approach the relationship in a different way.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, marriage counseling is more useful if they're both couples are willing to come. That's more useful than individual. But you've got to work with the individual if the other person is not willing to come. Right?
Something better
And
than
build-
nothing.
Yeah, and really to be able to soothe, calm, bring some sense of peace or some clarity for this individual that might help in the relationship in a different way.
Yes, and also skills building, because they may not have the voice to speak up. So speaking with someone and providing them with the support and the training can also help. So we do much more than just listen.
Yeah, because gaslighting can stop from the person as well, right? When I recognize that, no, my version is my version, and it's okay for me to kind of stand by that, that also changes the dynamics.
Stronger sense of self.
A
right?
stronger
So
sense
you
of
develop
self,
a
being
stronger sense of
assertive,
self.
being more confident, being more, having more of a voice, really, as well.
Yeah. And we will have this kind of self-doubt because if you've been conditioned your whole life to doubt yourself, to like just listen to people, you haven't really developed your own autonomy. So you are more inclined to always be doubting like, is what I'm thinking or feeling the way I should be thinking or feeling? And is there like a better way? And so if we are not really having that sense of self, it's very easy to just be swayed by the wind, or all kinds of influences. So it does take time to really develop yourself to become emotionally more mature and more resilient.
So, I really love your sharings, ladies. You brought to the table so much of wealth and of advice. And speaking of resources, if someone is going through a toxic relationship or you identify someone going through a toxic relationship, who can they approach and what is the next step for them?
Seek help, right? So we are all therapists, and there are so many different therapists here. There are government agencies as well. Aware is one of them, where we can give the number if needed. For reach agencies that they can reach out to. Definitely to talk to more people. That would help open up the secrecy and the feeling trapped.
Yeah, so if your safety is at a major risk, contact the police, contact the Aware helpline. Please talk to your friends and family so you're not doing it alone. That's the other thing that we find, that often we'd be the first person that they've spoken to. They haven't shared it with their closest friends, with their family, so they're really isolated. So please talk to people and then seek out counselors, seek out psychologists, get proper professional help so that if you can be supported to get on the other side of it.
Yes, so there's a lot of shame around feeling isolated because of this culture and this embarrassment that we are experiencing. However, if you do come across somebody who is not supportive, being very judgmental and being really negative and shaming you, this person probably isn't the kind of person you want in your life anyway. So really know that actually whatever that they are facing is not that uncommon.
You're not alone.
A real friend, a real person who cares will support you. So it's so important to even ask.
So you're not alone and this is not your fault.
Yeah.
So it's okay to ask for help. So really common things to hear, but really to take that in, that you deserve help and you deserve better, and it's okay for you to ask for it.
Wow, I love those lovely closing words. Thank you, ladies. And I really applaud HomeGround Asia for doing this. And they'll be scrolling numbers up for you to call and helplines for you to call and seek help if you need to. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.